everybody. Welcome to the Training, Learning, and Development Community, TLDC. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a few people already live in chat. Let's see. Kim is here. Always great to have Kim here at TLDC. Cheryl Habgood, Nicole, Cheryl, good to see you. Good morning. Janine, Julian, thanks for joining us this morning. We have another community member showcase, and today we're featuring Darcy Goshorn, who is somebody that recently joined as a member and has been attending some of our broadcasts. And I'm just super interested to talk with him because he's kind of been geeking out a little bit with like the conversations and the feedback that he's had, or the stuff he's been posting in his chat has been on a little bit on the geekier side. So that should be fun to kind of to delve into that somewhat. But as you guys know, I usually have about a dozen questions in the ask a question area at the bottom of the screen. So these are some of the things I'm going to be asking Darcy. And if you guys have any questions yourselves, feel free to add in there. You could even post them in chat, and usually I can catch that stuff too. But really, this is just like a 30-minute thing where we're going to get to know Darcy a little better, and hopefully you'll add him to your networks and get to know him a little better, because I already know that he's going to be a good resource, just with some of the conversations we've had in recent broadcasts. So, hey, Darcy, thanks for doing this today. I know I already thanked you in the green room, but yeah, so we're just going to get into this. Like right now, you're an instructional designer over at Bloomin Brands, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that includes, I mainly work for Outback Steakhouse, which is our biggest brand in the parent company. But we also have Bonefish, Carrabba's, Fleming's, and now we have a couple of weird ghost kitchen startups we're trying out. There's Aussie Grill and a chicken tender concept we're trying out.
Is like food something that you're already into, or how did you end up? Not you just sort of ended up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it really, really new to you, like just building instructional design for kitchens and stuff, or?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So I come from the education space, pure education space. Started off teaching at a high school in Pennsylvania in 2004. Moved into like instructional coaching, so teaching teachers, which was a lot of fun, and I loved it. I loved it just as much as teaching the kids. And then that brought me into the higher ed space. So I worked there for a while, teaching professors and doing some instructional design. And I followed a boss that I love. Like when you find a good supervisor, like you don't let that person go. And I did not let that person go. And I followed her here to Bloomin Brands.
Oh, nice. So now you're in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
How's that adjustment been for you?
It is the biggest thing, in my opinion, is the pace. Like higher ed's moving at like, it's like dinosaur pace, and corporate's just moving at like, like little velociraptor pace.
It's totally true. I've heard that so many times. I mean, is it something that you like or dislike, or is it, like, how do you feel about that?
I don't know if I prefer that pace, just because I tend to be like really detail oriented and like a perfectionist, and there's no time for that. Like we got to get it out.
Yeah. Do you have a big team?
We have, on the Outback team, we have 4 kind of instructional people that are kind of pure instructional people. And then beyond that, there are 8 more people that work with like operations training. And they're more of the people who know how to fix the grills and, that kind of stuff. So they become kind of our SMEs and work with us.
That's nice. So is there anything that you can tell us about that you're working on right now?
Sure. Right now, we're trying to refresh the training for the people who would work at the grill station in the kitchen. So we're going to kind of move from station to station and refresh that training, which is like 7 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're constantly doing leadership training because the brand has decided that we've been paying no attention to developing our people as leaders for the past couple of years. So we're starting at the kind of like the bottom of the ladder with regular in the store managers, and then working our way up the chain, and doing lots of alignment and things.
Oh, I love it. Okay, cool. So, are you having to make adjustments at all in like the way the content that you're using to train because of the pandemic? Is that impacting, the way that you're coming up with curriculum at all?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were developing e-learning prior to COVID,
Uh-huh.
and we have it's just the worst LMS in the world. But it's cheap, so oh well. But so we were developing kind of SCORM packages prior to that. Now we're trying to figure out like what's a good balance between tracking learning, because we don't have like a learning record store or anything of that nature. So if
Mhm.
it's not in the LMS, it's not getting tracked, is the bottom line. Um, and but we're leveraging the Rise like quick development, Articulate Rise quick development, and just
Mhm.
kind of building websites. You could call them web apps if you really wanted to do that, but they're basically
Mhm.
just ebooks kind of.
Mm.
And so far the field has just loved that because it's not as structured as a course,
Mhm.
per se, but it still has enough structure and enough flexibility for our trainers, because we have like regional trainer people in each part of the country, and they need flexibility when they're out there because Outbackers may be spaced out in the restaurant. Like if we're Outbackers are our hourly employees, I'm sorry. Outbackers are kind of spaced out in the restaurant, so they need to have their device in front of them, and printing out papers and garbage is just not the way anymore. So
Mhm.
yeah, we've had to adjust and make everything electronic now, including like job aids and everything like that.
Wow. So like Articulate Rise is one of the platforms that is like working out for you.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is super rapid development. We're getting people into that are not at all trained in learning and development. They're sort of
Mhm.
the subject matter people, and they're just picking it up like crazy.
Yeah.
We have like a, what do you call it, like a team license or whatever, so we can have a bunch of people in there.
Yeah. Now, so I'm going to ask you this, just because it seems like you have a bit of a technical background, but when I'm looking at like your LinkedIn profile and stuff, I'm not seeing anything in there. Like it's all you're a
No
webmaster.
certificates. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But then
Yeah.
like, didn't you post something about like having like HTML and CSS or some? I don't know. Like what's your background in like tech? I mean, or are you just a computer nerd kind of person, or
Yeah,
what's?
that's exactly it. That is exactly it. When you boil it down, that's what it comes down to. Like I've just always been curious about it, and I must
Mhm.
like I don't know, it clicks for me. Um, so yeah, I don't have any formal training around
Yeah.
it. And as long as you like, in my opinion, as long as an instructional designer, as long as you know kind of web front end development, just the basics like HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript,
Yeah.
man, that can shoot you, above the pack as far as I'm concerned.
No, and that is really a great piece of advice for people. Just it can make a huge difference, I think, just because if you're building out something, if you're creating any e-learning and you just need to make some adjustments that you might not be able to make in like, in say whatever the platform tool is, if you can just add whatever that, if you know a little bit of HTML and CSS and some JavaScript, that can really change whatever you're building out. So that's great. So, but no formal technology background at all. You're a
No.
webmaster, but I mean, you must have some design chops, and it's just all stuff you picked up, like as you've been moving forward with just technology stuff.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like take a challenge and that's how you learn, right? So I've taken all kinds of crazy challenges, like organizations that never had a website, and I'm just like, I guess I'll learn WordPress now, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, totally. So let's talk about that. What other kinds of jobs have you worked?
So I started off teaching in the public school. I
Mhm.
taught English, language arts, and journalism there. And the journalism piece is what, there was a lot of technology involved in that. And of course, design, because we did the yearbook and the literary magazine, the newspaper, and all that. So I used that as an opportunity to pick up some of the design stuff.
Mhm.
I worked. I had a big life change at some point and decided to just move overseas. I said, I need a big change, need a big challenge, because, like I said, I love like a new challenge because that's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And I looked around for international school jobs, and there are lots of those, of course, especially teaching English. But I ended up being a technology director for the Oslo International School in Norway for just a year because it's a very cold place, and I decided I'm not a cold place person. That was a heck of a lot of fun, though.
Well, yeah, and that's really interesting. Moving in, like a technology director job. How did that happen?
It's a small enough school where they just have no clue what they're doing, quite frankly, like organizationally speaking. The turnover rates at international schools are very high.
Yeah.
So you get people coming and going with crazy ideas. And so this new crazy idea from the American director there was, hey, we need someone to direct our learning technology. And it was just a mess.
Yeah.
It was like this hodgepodge they had like 3 LMSs. It was crazy. So I got those kind of cleaned up a little bit, but more importantly, like I changed attitudes amongst the faculty about it because they all just hated it. So it's all about that attitude change there.
Wow. That's very cool. I mean, why Oslo, Norway?
I don't know.
Okay, pin dropped right on the map. There we go.
I mean, after I did a little bit of research, and they have great quality of living there, quite frankly. And if you're an outdoors person, man, it is a wonderland, for outdoors. But of course, like, I don't know how they let me into the country because I had never skied before. And I feel like that should just be a requirement for your visa. You have to have an indoor hobby or know how to ski because otherwise it's going to be a dark, long winter.
Oh, that's great. Wow. That's awesome. Kim is asking, any jobs while you were an undergrad that might inform your empathy with workers now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So when I was doing my undergrad, I worked at a Wise Market in Pennsylvania, which is a grocery store chain kind of in the Northeast, I think. Yeah. And I was just your generic stock boy in the aisles and worked my way up to like night manager. So like that it's not quite the same as hospitality, experience, but dealing with customers, of course, is one of the biggest parts of working at Outback or anywhere like that. And like, for me, I'm driven here at Outback. One of the big drives for me here, the thing keeping me here, is like the food service industry in general is just one of the best platforms to get people into the middle class from wherever they are. And that he was some kind of director of accounting or something that talked to us about that whenever we were first hired. And that really struck a chord with me. I was like, yeah, you're right. Like this is a step up. This is where people get started. That really drives me.
Wow, that's some excellent insight. I never looked at it that way. That's awesome, and I love the fact that it's that it spoke to you in that regard. So, talking about that, what's the favorite part of what you do right now? What's the favorite part of your job?
I really enjoy. They have a history of training here. Like training is not new for this organization, but effective training is. So their idea of training a couple years ago was just like, can we just make a checklist for this grill guy and give it to him, and then throw him on the grill? And if he doesn't hit all the checklist items, he needs to learn, and that equals like a course or somebody standing behind him hitting him with a stick or something, So it's interesting. One of my favorite parts is going out into our restaurants and just kind of standing in the kitchen and watching our people and seeing, one, how they're learning right now, and two, how they're doing their jobs, because no one has really picked apart how they do their jobs and how they learn. And I love that. Like, as a kind of a researcher in me, I love looking at that.
Yeah. And I mean, you must run into some folks that come in that are probably already fairly skilled that, but might have other ways of doing certain things. And you kind of get to, get a peek into that. And that's really interesting. Yeah. Kim is like, in quotation marks, she's
yes.
She's putting in task analysis. Very
Yeah, and what do
cool.
you call those, structured interviews or whatever? I think there's some fancy words for it.
Yeah.
But I love doing that. I love talking to our people because when you really get down to it, like I was just in the restaurant last week here in Tampa
Mhm.
and watching the grill guy, and there was a very experienced grill guy there, and
Uh-huh.
he also works at another steakhouse on the
Uh-huh.
side and stuff. And I'm asking him lots of questions, and I get down to like the basics, like how do you know that that steak's done? You're taking that steak off the grill, you're
Uh-huh.
plating it. How do you know that that's done? He's like, I just know.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Uh-huh.
and if you look at the formal training materials, it says, well, you got to temp the steak with a little thermometer, or you got to use the fist method, which is where you do, certain number of fingers and you feel your palm, and that tells you your doneness. And he said, I don't do any of that. I just know when it's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
takes a lot of talking to get to the bottom of that.
It's interesting. And those guys, I mean, well, anyway, I really do like, Kim is saying it's hard work. And I'm very, I think that you need to have, I mean, the skill set that you need to have to be effective at being, even just a short order cook, anything like that. Like those guys run on automatic and they're pretty amazing. They're just like going for it. And that is not easy work to like be standing there doing that for hours a day. So it's great that you're just helping support those folks. I love looking at it that way. So now you're a corporate instructional designer, and you've been years and years of just being in higher ed, and and just being a teacher. Is there anything that you wish you had known when you had started out on this path?
Oh yeah, like one thing I started learning it when I worked in higher ed, but I think here's where it really Outback really drove it home for me, is that it's a people business. Like it's about people, and coming from like a geeky childhood, a pretty geeky college career, and even in teaching, unfortunately, the public schools are very kind of robotic now. So my partner's also a teacher. He works as an elementary's teacher here in Tampa, and it's become kind of a robotic process. But he's pretty good at making it, at humanizing it. And I
Mhm.
wish I had focused on that from the get-go, because I developed, when I was teaching, I developed some very robotic lesson plans that I regret, but those are all burned now.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I love it. I love these answers. This is really fantastic. Is there a particular tool or service that you don't currently have right now that you wish you had, something to help you do your job better? I mean, especially coming from, like the more of a traditional education background and you're running into corporate. Is there anything that you wish you kind of had right now that would help you do your job more effective? And the reason I ask this question is more like, what are some cool things out there that other people could potentially look at getting that like maybe you don't have?
Yeah, like hint, hint in the chat there. Maybe you have some ideas.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, what we desperately need, at least at Outback, is a video, like our own video hosting service. We're sort of like piecemealing these things, like we're using the Microsoft, whatever it's called now, service, Microsoft Stream, included
Mm,
with our 365 package. We sometimes use Vimeo, like a shared Vimeo account, which I'm sure is not against, or sure is not with their terms of service. And YouTube is unfortunately blocked in our restaurant, so we would
yeah.
obviously just use that. But man, I wish we had a video like management something server. I
Oh,
don't know what.
yeah. Yeah. Kim, I wonder what you guys are using over there at Cinecraft to host your stuff. I know, like I've been in situations in the past, even when I was at, like at the e-learning guild, and it's like we were doing the same thing. It's like, do we host it on YouTube? Do we host it on
hmm
Vimeo? Do we host it? Like, are we
What's
just
on? You
putting
have
it
to
on
ask. There's like this matrix of questions. What's unblocked in the restaurants? What provides captioning? How long is the video?
Right,
Ugh.
right. Yeah, no, that's a good one. If you guys in chat have any recommendations, feel free to post them in there. Yeah, they're Nicole saying that they host a lot on Microsoft Stream, and I personally have never even heard of Microsoft Stream. And I can tell you, TLDC is like YouTube and Vimeo. Those are the two things that I use. But
Yeah.
I always love to hear about different solutions for for this quandary. Love it. Is there a particular project that you're especially proud of that you want to talk about?
We as a part of our manager and training program, we rolled out a big part of it for managers at our Outbacks is vibe checking your people. They love the term vibe check at this company, which is it's like a millennial term, at least I think it is. So it's interesting that they've been using it for quite a while. And they originally their notion of vibe checking as like a process or a tactic is like you ask the hourly people how they're doing and you pay attention to their answers and then you react accordingly. And I'm like, that is the most boring definition of a vibe check I've ever heard. So we used let me grab the link here. I found the blob tree. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Hang on. So I'm gonna link to just a Google search of it because there's a bunch of resources out there. Apparently, it's used in like child psychology, which is perfect for our people.
Blob tree.
Yes. Here we go.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So what it boils down to is some I'm sure old white dude developed a graphic of these kind of amorphous blob people in a tree, and each person has its own facial expression, or it's taking some kind of action, like it's holding another blob person or whatever, and they're all numbered. And so I think its history is like child psychologists would ask the child, where are you on the blob tree? Which number are you? How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? And they tell you, I'm the happy blob, or, it's the same thing as like smile sheets or the things they use in the medical profession. But it has been the biggest hit at this organization because they're not used to like making it visual. Like they're used to just talking about it or looking at a checklist. So just introducing this graphic and saying, use this to conduct a vibe check with your people, ask them where they are, it blew their minds. And it's now like in every PowerPoint in our company.
Interesting. I mean, so like how does that work? So you show them the graphic and do they just point like I'm down here, or
yeah. And
yeah,
it's real. There's a lot of them that are kind of like, it's all about relational stuff. So a lot of the blobs are touching other blobs, or they're helping them up or pushing them off the tree. So a lot of times we'll do it at the end of any training program. We'll say, okay, now that you've learned X, how do you feel about this? And they'll say, well, I'm down here at the bottom of the tree. I'm just starting off. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Or you know what? I'm at the top of the tree, feeling great, good to go.
Fascinating. Wow.
Because I don't,
but you're not
like,
yeah, you're sticking with vibe check though, right? You don't call it
oh yeah,
check.
yeah. We still like trademark vibe check, that's our language. They're the culture here at this company is very set in. They're very tied to their Aussie slang sayings and stuff like that. So you try not to upset the boat on that one.
Nice. Nicole has a great question. How do you use that information once they identify what blob they are?
Yeah, so typically the advice we give to our trainers, because we're publishing, stuff for our regional trainers, we don't actually deliver it ourselves. The kind of speaker notes that we put in there are, number one, your blob choice can be a very personal choice. So like a lot of times they don't even do it out loud. It's just show the graphic and then think in your mind where you are in the blob tree. And what we recommend is doing it once at the beginning of the training. So in theory, they start off at the bottom of the tree at the beginning. They're like, I'm very uncomfortable about whatever we're going to talk about. And then at the end, you show it again. Okay, have you moved up the blob tree at all? And they think about that. Sometimes they'll submit their answers in the chat and they'll say, I'm a number 5 now, which is great. I learned a lot or whatever. So it's just kind of a gauge for us,
Really interesting. I like Kim's idea where stickers with the blobs that employees can affix to their name badges day by day where they're feeling.
And it's go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say that must help with the language too, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, the language barriers can be pretty steep for us. We have a large population of Hispanic workers in our restaurants, in addition to other populations. But so that's always a challenge for us. Of course, you could do captions in the whole 9 yards and make it accessible, but like getting it down to the visual, and that's like I've been in some of these TLDC things, and people talk about their personal brands or their professional brands, and that's a big gap for me. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out what my personal brand is, and for me, it kind of comes down to see, feel, learn. So I try to get people to see things visually, that they've never seen before, and then feel things. And those blobs are so generic that people just immediately identify with them, because it's all just based on facial expressions. We've thought about like branding that concept and doing like kangaroos or koalas in the tree. I don't know why the kangaroos will be in the tree. The koalas in the tree, but it's very difficult to what's the word? Design or do art of like koalas in all of those positions, because koalas are like little balls,
Yeah. No, totally. I just want to read out what Nicole is posting here. Very interesting. Still thinking through tips or call to action if they're still scared or cautious, a blob, and haven't moved up that tree. Love the visual though for the learners to see and identify with. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I mean, this is just a personal anecdote, but my dad was he was a migrant worker, and most of his, the people that he worked with, they were all, primarily Hispanic. And so when I think of, just understanding sort of that process and the ideas behind it, it really sort of just speaks to me, like being able to just communicate better and get how they're feeling, because they used to work out, in the fields doing agriculture. And man, that is like tough work as well. And so I can't help but sort of think about how would you apply that there to them? Like, is there, harvesting celery or whatever, like we used to, I used to go out with them sometimes to check it out. So it's really, that's a very cool thing that you guys are doing that.
It is. Right, so Nicole's point is like it. I take that to heart too, because like I do worry about like, are our trainers treating that data appropriately? Because that's data coming in, right? And are they treating it and reacting to it appropriately? And the bottom line is we have to kind of just coach them and hope that they're doing that. But even before the blob tree, like we weren't really legitimately asking our people how they felt. We were just doing, how you doing today? And of course they would say great, they're getting paid. So just to get them thinking about their own learning and their own feelings is just a start for us. And then, next level is kind of like, okay, what do we do with that?
Yeah. And I think maybe I just sort of was taken with your, just you bringing up the data part of it, because for me, it automatically, it's the sort of this empathy piece where I'm like, oh, you're really just trying to figure out how they're feeling. And that's so cool. But then actually that's very useful data all around as far as the business is concerned or the organization is concerned, and being able to sort of transfer that into how you're doing your job. So there's that piece of it as well. Very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. So let me move on to some of these more like, I don't know, I guess softer questions, like who or what keeps you inspired?
I picked out a couple of links here. Hang on, let me put some links in chat. I'm just going to share them all at once as one link that you can go to.
All right.
That way I don't have to constantly jump back and forth and do a lot of pasting. There you go. I think that'll work. It's like a one tab thing with all the links on it. There's a couple of design things. When I think about inspiration, for me, the graphic design piece is not something I have a lot of experience with. So I'm constantly like looking at models of graphic design that are good and working on those. And so I get newsletters from Sidecar and Dribble. I think those are daily newsletters. Dribble's great, it's searchable database. Sidecar is more condensed. It kind of gives you 5 things to think about that day for user experience. So those are 2 things I get on the daily that sometimes I have time to read them. Sometimes I just click delete, but when I'm looking for inspiration, those are 2 big sources for me.
Nice. This is cool. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Oh, and Learning Science Weekly. Learning Science Weekly is a really good newsletter. Oh my gosh. I wouldn't say
I've seen that come through. I need to look more into that. Learning Science Weekly, because I think I've seen some posts that have come through. I don't do much on Facebook, but I don't know. There's somebody in there that's posted some stuff on our Facebook group, and I'm like, this is like really, really interesting stuff, like research-based things.
Yeah, it's very academic, for most of my team, that's kind of like, whoosh, like they're gonna click delete on that one, TLDR.
Right.
um, but for me and my boss and a couple of my other coworkers, they do take the research and kind of put it in taglines for you. So that's always helpful.
Yeah. Nice. Man, I still have some questions for you, but and I want to ask them all because you are so interesting.
I'll just
But
talk more quickly.
so let me ask you this one. How would your best friend describe what you do for a living?
Oh yeah. Well, I asked my partner about this last night. Now he knows a little bit more than most, but he
Right.
said I help create the materials that people who work at Outback use to learn and do their jobs.
Okay.
But what most of my friends think of me as is like when they have a terrible experience at an Outback restaurant, they're like, Darcy needs to work on that.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. Which I think after this, you've inspired me to go to Outback, which is like kind of in the next town over. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have to convince my wife to do a run over to Outback. So if you weren't an L&D professional, what would you be?
I would probably be, if I wasn't in the education space, I think I'd be working in some kind of like hospitality entertainment space. Like I would
Mm,
love to work for Disney. I love going to their parks, but
mm-hmm,
they seem to be a very interesting corporation to work for. They're huge, of course.
mm-hmm.
I haven't heard all good things about their company, but I would love to explore that company a little bit.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, yeah, I mean, you're in Florida, so there you go.
Hmm.
One thing that people should know about you, what is it?
That if I meet you, I will squeeze something. Like I may hug you, I may squeeze whatever food you brought to my house. I need to squeeze. I don't know why. It's a tactile thing or something. Um, I used to, so part of Tampa is called Ybor City, and it's one of the old historical neighborhoods. It was cigar factory sort of headquarters
Mhm.
between here and Cuba in the old days. And it's full of feral chickens that they brought over, both to eat and to fight.
Mhm.
But now they're sort of roaming free and they're protected. And I would always try and catch them and like squeeze them. I've always wanted to squeeze a chicken, and I don't know why.
Wait, have you caught one and squeezed one
No,
yet? I
no,
mean,
you don't catch those chickens. They have the big
oh, okay.
spurs, and no,
Oh,
they're like street chickens. No, no, no.
that's a dangerous thing. Okay, nice. And last question: best compliment you've ever received?
Uh, um, j- the Just this week we were doing some webinars for our kind of regional managers over multiple stores, and they were using Zoom, which isn't the product we normally use, and and I had to give direction to somebody to click, this and click this, click that, and afterwards they said, you sounded so calm," and I
Mhm.
thought, yeah, like in this time of COVID and we're online all the time and webinars and garbage, like we forget to like slow down and like
Yeah,
everything's going to be fine. We're not, at least at Outback, we're not saving lives.
yeah,
um, so that was a nice compliment to hear. Like it's calm, they feel comfortable, and that's what I
yeah.
want. Like I want good feelings.
No, that's totally true. That is a great reminder for everybody. It's like, because just on a daily basis, it's pretty stressful, and it does help to sort of just, exude like a sort of an environment of peace. I actually do have one more question. Is it okay if I ask you one more and then we'll wrap
Sure.
it up? Okay. What is something you wish you were really good at?
Um, so the graphic design piece is a bit of a challenge for me. I wish I was
Mhm,
better at that. There's
mhm.
one guy on our team, and he is just, I don't know where he gets it. He just, he's more, it just flows for him. He can whip together a PowerPoint so quickly. It's unbelievable. A PowerPoint that looks good and like it's synchronized and everything. Um, so I wish I had better graphic design skills, but I don't know where you learn that or how
Yeah.
you learn that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Good to know. I think it is something that you can just work through as soon as you, I don't know, for me personally, like, well, when I was in high school, my English teacher, as much as I wanted to be a writer, my English teacher told me that I should be a graphic designer, but which was that was so mean. But I ended up taking some classes and just kind of going through learning specific things like, understanding colors and stuff. And really you can like even just go on YouTube or, buy some courses on Udemy or something, and you can work through it. But it's something you can definitely learn. Yeah. So Darcy, thank you so much for doing this. This is great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, the conversation was fantastic. And I hope that you continue to participate with TLDC. You are somebody obviously that would be incredible to work with. And I don't know, do you ever go to events or anything? You go to conferences and stuff, or?
It's been a long time since I've been to a conference. They're not so conference-y at Outback as they are in higher ed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope to. What do you have any recommendations?
Well, if you're in Florida, the e-learning guild does the Learning Solutions Conference in Orlando, which would be a really good one. It used to be my favorite one. That when I worked there, we used to do that one, and I loved it more than like all the like DevLearn, which was always felt way too big for me. But Learning Solutions.
Oh yeah, I've seen the website for that one, and it's scary.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll let them know. I'm like, but the Learning Solutions is always so mellow, and I just love being able to hang out there and talk to people when I work that one. So that's a good one, and I know a lot of the TLDC folks are people that participate in e-learning guild activities. So that's a good one, and I'm sure ATD, it seems, or maybe they switch between Atlanta and other places for some of their big ones. But anyway, that's one to look at. And that when conferences come back, maybe that one next year, and hopefully we'll meet you there. And then like Kim's saying, someday there will be another TLDC one. So, and that's how we started out. We used to produce events, live events, which is really something that I love to do. So, you never know. I think that you would be a fantastic speaker as well.
That would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I might have to hit you up.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Darcy, again, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody connect with Darcy. I think that he's going to be just an incredible resource for you. He's got like such a great background, and Cheryl, he would be a great speaker. And you guys, we'll see you next week. I'm slowly building out the November program. I've got a couple things in line. I'm just getting all kinds of stuff together. I'm still on the fence about next week because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of noise for some reason next week. And so I'm trying to figure out how much I want to contribute to everything that'll be going on. So we might only have one or two next week, but until then, we'll see you. Bye, everybody. Thanks again, Darcy.